So we head over to Bordeaux later this month to taste the 2015s, which should be quite an interesting tasting experience. It's already high expectation of Bordeaux 2015. It looks like being a very strong vintage, delivering a fruit that has terrific ripeness by all accounts. Quite how that's going to measure up to the 2009s and 2010s remains to be seen. Will it hit such dramatic highs? The whole question that's looming in the background, if you like, is the question of release pricing, and that's going to become a concern in due course. Will the Bordelais push prices up to a level that is unattractive to the market? Clearly with 2011, 2012, 2013, certainly there's a market semblance that they missed the mark. With 14 perhaps they got it pretty much close to expectation, but with 15, with a greater quality vintage on their hands, quite how high might release prices go and quite how far might the market follow. So that remains to be seen. At this stage what we do know is that the meteorological data suggests a very fine vintage. Gavin Quinney, who owns a petit chateau in Bordeaux, who writes a blog for Livex, which is well worth following for data on the weather patterns, quipped that 2015 is going to be a great vintage because it ends in a 5. His view is that vintages that end in a 5 or a 0 tend to be great Bordeaux vintages. I think I probably, from the weather data, I probably agree with Gavin that this is going to follow in that suit. The dry whites were harvested at the early stages of September in pretty good condition. They came through with some very, very high praise indeed, so we're expecting some high quality dry white Grave. On the more early maturing vineyards of Pomerol and Saint-Emilion, the Merlot may have struggled a little bit with some early rains, but that remains to be seen. But the later terroir, those that are perhaps a cooler site, came through in very fine form, and I think there's going to be some promise there. And then when we move across into the Medoc, Merlot's ripening just that little bit later, came through in good condition, and Cabernet Sauvignon in early October was not a problem. So it feels like the harvest was relatively uncomplicated. I don't think we're going to see the same degree of homogeneity that we saw in 2009, 2010 or even 2005. There was a bit of rain in August, and that played out differently for different areas of Bordeaux, and that might become one of the real determining factors, because we have heard it reported already that there were differing harvest dates between the states, and that will lead to some form of natural variation. So I think my advice at this stage is it's too early to call. We will be going across 2 teams from Atlas to taste. One at the just before the UGC week, one for the UGC week, and we'll be able to comment on the style of the wines and a little bit on the market at that stage. But I am expecting a little bit more variation, so beware of generalisations in a vintage like 15. But I'm expecting some real high points, and the comments that have emanated from chateau owners that we've been in discussion with have suggested parallels to great vintages, but perhaps with a slightly more supple element to the tannins, making the wines that little bit more forward. So a very, very fine vintage in prospect. Quite what the Bordeaux Chateau make of it from a price perspective remains to be seen. We need to taste, and we need to see the market's acceptance.